A new year brings a new Call of Duty, and whether it's at the start or closer to the reveal, we always have to ask, why? It sells, and millions enjoy it, begrudgingly or otherwise, but the necessity of a new entry is always worth pondering. Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3 2023 takes the question to a whole new level, especially when you peel back the campaign to judge some of the good bits. Let's get this out of the way. The campaign is a disaster. There's no two ways about it, no way to sugarcoat or soften the blow, whether you believe the reports about it being a spin-off expansion to Modern Warfare 2, or how the entire game came together in a very short time. It's an unmitigated dreary mess. It wants you to care about its characters, but doesn't need you to. It wants you to get invested in its loadouts and play the game the way you want, but can't be bothered to make things interesting enough to inspire that. It's vapid, inconsequential, and lazy, but without the schlocky, over-the-top action set pieces that the genre is renowned for. And once you've stripped out those, what's really left in this annoying globe-trotting exercise? The first mission sees you infiltrating a Russian gulag to free Vladimir Makarov, the what's old is new again antagonist, and feels like a typical Call of Duty campaign. Fairly linear, with some interesting bits like rappelling down the floors of a prison, slaying guards, and using rioting prisoners as a diversion. It ends with the player leaping off a cliff, which is appropriate because the campaign goes right with them. But from this point on, there isn't a campaign, but a loosely connected string of missions, almost obligated to appear, almost certainly under duress. These include the new open combat missions, where the rage truly begins to build. Your first open combat mission sees you controlling Farah, who suffers an assault from Makarov's forces, as they attempt to seize missiles from her side's shipyard. As such, you must search for manifestos to find said containers and then attach GPS trackers. Thus, when they're taken, Farah and eventually Task Force 141 can track them. Speaking of the plausible deniability squad, they're told about Makarov's escape before jumping off a plane for a mission. Captain Price turns the chopper around, aborting the operation because Makarov is seemingly that big of a threat. Remember when the game was meant to be gritty and realistic? How can anyone believe something like this would happen? It's like the original plan was for the player to be in the middle of a mission as Task Force 141 and then receive the news of Makarov's escape. If so, that would have been way better than this. Also, if this was meant to sell how much of a threat Makarov is, it fails because he hasn't done anything yet. Anyway, back to Farah, who meanders around collecting resources and weapons in loot crates while fighting off Makarov's infinitely respawning forces. While the open combat mission design sounds promising, from discovering weapons that to use in future replays of the same scenario, it's ultimately a bland, boring adaptation of Modern Warfare 2 2022's DMZ. And there aren't any interesting objectives, contracts, or events here, just the story signposts. You have no reason to replay these or even think outside the box when trying to complete them. Sneak around, gun everything down, both. It ultimately doesn't matter one iota for the story or the mission, as long as you fulfill these milquetoast objectives. Such is the thought and care put into the enemy placement and AI that they spawn near your location when the base is alerted and almost always seems to know where to look for you, until you find a place to lay low, wait out the timer, and everything returns to normal. While you may encounter enemies with more body armor and helmets when playing aggressively, it's a far cry from something like Metal Gear Solid 2 Sons of Liberty. Guards won't investigate the area further and keep looking for you, as any base under threat would. Taking down enemies won't cause a patrol to radio in and find out what happened, sending a squad to investigate. You could argue that the game doesn't want to make things too difficult for those who prefer to run and gun. Couldn't it at least have provided some fun objectives? The next open combat mission sees Captain Price parachuting into a base with a reactor, and it's massive. There are vehicles to commandeer, sentry and SAM turrets, and construction sites, and he has to destroy 3 helicopters. Just find some grenades, chuck them at the landing zone, rinse and repeat 3 times. Head inside the reactor and fight off some enemies before the cutscene leading to your extraction. If I wanted such a bland mission design, I'd travel to 2014 and play Destiny's campaign. At least the loot was better. Unfortunately, even the linear missions don't get any better. One mission, Deep Cover, sees Laswell infiltrating a Russian base, thankfully not gathering loot from crates to garner some information. The entire mission involves walking around but not getting too close to enemy guards. so they don't recognize you, waiting for an officer to emerge, killing him when he's isolated, stealing his keycard, using it on a door, and entering a closet for a cutscene. There's also an escape sequence since the base is the target of a missile strike, spreading sarin gas throughout as Laswell makes her escape. I've nothing against short missions, but when nothing remotely interesting happens, why not just have cutscenes? Or remove them entirely and focus on the rest of the game? To sum it up, again, Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3's campaign is an unmitigated disaster, and if you paid $70 to pre-order and play it in early access, you're completely justified in getting a refund. Now the question arises, what about the rest of the game? Let's start with the multiplayer. It's fine, sometimes bordering on an okay experience, but still burdened by all of the idiosyncrasies and flaws that make it a first-person shooter. There are several high ground areas which, when controlled, tend to lean more towards slower-paced play than camping. The movement speed and options, especially tac sprint and sliding, offer a counter in this respect, and there are plenty of flanking routes to get the drop on enemies. The bump in health for multiplayer is also decent, providing options to escape without severely bogging down the time to kill. However, there are also atrocious spawns, to the effect that some maps were temporarily pulled. In one free-for-all match, I was fortunate enough to spawn and die almost instantly several times. On other occasions, in Team Deathmatch, I would spawn remarkably close to the person who killed me before. Perhaps it's because of the increased movement speed, which makes it harder to find suitable safe places to spawn players, but at times it becomes too chaotic to keep track of. There's also the continuing issue of getting the drop on an enemy, firing several rounds, and getting instantly melted. When you view the kill cam, you'll notice that your opponent fired before or during the same time as you, which wasn't the case. Maybe it's a latency issue, but it goes both ways. On one occasion, spraying mercilessly somehow killed an enemy in front of me when it seemed I was dead to rights, and also killed their teammate nearby, even though I was confident that my reticle was nowhere near them. Matchmaking also continues to be something special. Sometimes it opts for one strong player on a team of not-so-strong players, myself included, and we lose. Even if it isn't a blowout, the KDs show one-sided domination. On the other hand, it'll throw me into matches where I perform reasonably well, even if I'm not the highest scoring member of the team, as I get some kill streaks, score some double kills, etc. While the gunplay and movement feel crisp, the odd yo-yoing of matchmaking with all the other issues makes it difficult to sink in for extended periods. Cue the usual, if they fix these issues then multiplayer will be perfect comments, though it's much easier said than done. I won't comment much on weapon balance, since these things are usually in flux, but the assault rifles and SMGs feel good. The battle rifles, somewhat clunky, and the LMGs relatively fine. I didn't mess around much with the aftermarket parts, but the gunsmith customization is decent, if nothing particularly game-changing. The UI could be better, especially when editing custom loadouts, but it's serviceable. Finally, we arrive at Zombies. It's an extraction shooter. You start with a relatively basic loadout, drop in, loot caches and supply chests, and upon extraction, get to keep whatever contraband you bagged. Eventually, you can craft schematics for weapon mods and enable effects like elemental or explosive damage. Unlike several other extraction shooters, there's no PvP. You arrive with 2 other teammates and can link up with other squads in the area to complete objectives. Slaying the undead and completing contracts can provide currency to purchase weapons, upgrades, and items. The contracts provide unique events, like escorting and defending an ATV, deactivating missiles, killing targets, raiding weapon stashes, cracking safes, and more. You also encounter strongholds and infested strongholds. There's a storyline of sorts to Zombies, which you can progress through by fulfilling different objectives. However, the overall goal is to approach the center. The outskirts are level 1, which is fairly easy with rare weapons. Level 2 bumps up the difficulty and undead count significantly, and having vests with more armor slots, higher rarity weapons that have been pack-a-punched, perks, and more are necessary for survival. Things can get hectic in the level 2 areas, especially when you encounter more special zombies. Also, you can tackle things at your own pace, retreat to easier areas, and get fully kitted out before progressing. What seemed like it could be a mode uncomfortably bolted onto an extraction shooter feels natural. Whether it's dropping in to shoot some stuff and extract to earn XP, to progress through the ranks, or fight for your life against overwhelming hordes, Zombies in Modern Warfare 3 2023 is fine. Perhaps the only negative is that contracts can get repetitive if you're continuously farming them, but the range of other activities helps mix things up. Also, even if you have no interest in zombies, dropping in and extracting weapons makes them available in multiplayer. Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3 2023 is a tale of two ends. On one end, you have the rushed campaign with its awful mission design and lame story that struggles to hold your interest when the open combat missions aren't dead set on killing it. On the other end is zombies, and in the middle is multiplayer. Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3 isn't worth picking up for the campaign, but I'm sure some players never cared about it in the first place, just as others care less about multiplayer or zombies. It's still a tough sell for $70. Modern Warfare 3 2023 can be decent in some areas, but that shouldn't come with so many caveats and a terrible campaign. As the overall package stands, it's far below the very best that the genre has to offer, never mind forget stacking up to this year's heavy hitters. And that brings us to the end of the video. A quick request: we upload new videos every single day, and if you like what we're doing, please consider subscribing. It really helps us out. Also, don't forget to enable all notifications by clicking the bell icon so that you can receive daily video updates. Thanks for watching.